High School, where the central office is located. But I want to say thank you for turning out. Thanks. And last name. Because they understand, as all of us do, issues. It's informed. It's a great idea to get to know where your candidates stand, who they are, a little bit about. Because an informed electorate will make the best choices. It's the most powerful thing that we have in our country. Before we get started driving down here, and I get a little bit of emotional about this, but 21 years ago today, our community suffered tragic loss. 21 years ago, July 9th, 2003, Deputy John Music and Sergeant Jerry Mundy of the Mount Juliet Police Department were tragically and horrifically killed in an accident out there on Interstate 40 and Mount Juliet Road. Let's have a moment of silence in memory of those gentlemen. We came up with a format for tonight, and I actually brought a coin to flip, and we'll put that here in just a moment to see who goes first. But the format we'll follow will start with a brief 2-minute introduction for each candidate. Then we'll move into specific questions that I have drafted related to topics that each candidate suggested. I asked each one of them to come up with 10 topics they felt were important about this election. There were some duplications, but actually we had about 15 or 16 topics total to choose from. I drafted the questions, and neither candidate or anyone affiliated with their campaign has seen the questions that I've drawn up. So it's kind of a blind draw. Today, Carrie was typing these up. I made the offhand comment that she had no idea that somebody might be willing to pay her some good money for a copy of them, but they did not leave. Based upon the coin flip, whoever wins that coin toss will go first. They'll have 2 minutes to respond to that question. Then the other candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to that question. Then the original responder will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal, and then the other candidates will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Then we'll move on to the next question, but we'll start that one with the other candidate. So that way, hopefully, we'll have the fairest opportunity to go through this. At the end of the question period, we'll hopefully get through about 10. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to summarize their position, address any topic they wish about this race, and to ask you for your support and your vote. And with that, I would just simply ask that as we go through the evening, if you would hold down any reactions, interruptions, so that hopefully we can get out within an hour or so. And with that, who would like to call coin toss? Ball heads. I've seen this done on ball games. Would you look at that corner? That's a head. That's a tail. Okay. So, I don't know what it is, but I forgot what you want. Head. Oh my goodness. It's head. So we'll go first. Pfeiffer, if you would, just 2 minutes to tell folks who you are, a little bit about your background and why you're interested in this race.
Great. Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to Judge Tatum and Christy Dunn for doing the really hard work tonight to make sure that this was going to happen for us. I am Carrie Pfeiffer, your current Zone 1 school board representative. I am a 30-plus year resident of Wilson County and a graduate of Mount Juliet High School. I have 3 kids, 1 graduate of Mount Juliet High School and 2 who are students here at Green Hill. In addition to that, I taught social studies, just about every social studies subject you could name, at Lebanon High School. So I have been a bear, a mama bear, I've helped build the hill, and I once a Blue Devil, you're always a Blue Devil. I've been all through it throughout the entire county. I decided to run 4 years ago for 2 main reasons. One was that my predecessor in this office was opposed to building Green Hill High School in this location. And I thought that that was an incredible disservice to our children in Zone 1. In addition to that, some of you will remember in 2020 that we had a pretty significant budget crisis. There was a lot of conflict over the budget between school board members and then also between the board members and the director of schools. There were questions about the relationship there with the county commission. And I was very concerned, and I believed that I could do better than the threats of elimination of education assistant positions and coaching stipends and other things that would have had a pretty significant negative impact on our kids. Over the last 4 years, I believe I have done better, and I have delivered on the promises that I made about what I was going to focus on during my time in office. We have successfully navigated negotiations with insurance and the rebuilding of 2 schools that were destroyed by tornadoes. We have purchased land at 2 different locations for building 3 schools, one of which is already under. All right.
Mr. Hohman.
Thank you, Judge Tatum, for moderating tonight. Christy, nice meeting you for the first time. Carrie, thank you for being here tonight. I came from an educational system that was literally on fire. By the time I realized how bad it had gotten, there wasn't much for my family to do. We decided at that point in our family's journey that we needed to make a change. So we researched across the nation for the most conservative state. We found the most conservative county in that state to move to. It's important because we didn't feel like we belonged where we were, and now I feel like we did make the best choice of our lives. But I wanted to make sure we were very sensitive to the educational system that we left, and so we started to attend school board meetings here in Wilson County. What I found in attending those meetings was some of the very same talking points, some of the very same policies, the same tone that we left behind and in California. So to me, it was like the playbook in California was right here in Wilson County, and I had a little post-traumatic stress syndrome, if you will. I couldn't sit back at this point because there was really nothing we could do in California. It was so bad at that point that I don't want that to happen again here. So I hope tonight you can learn a little bit more about each of us, keep it open, and at the end of the night, be more informed. Again, I'm Greg Hohman, so I didn't introduce myself, but I'm looking forward to tonight. You guys know a little bit more about us.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go to our first question. And based on that coin toss, we'll start with you, Mr. Hohman. If you would describe your vision or belief about the role of a school board member, what are you allowed to do, what you're not permitted to do, and what are your specific talents, experiences, and abilities that you can bring to the office that you believe would make you the most effective board member?
I appreciate that question. I have 22 years of experience in the development world. I'm a professional engineer. I have a master's degree in civil engineering. And with the amount of development work that this county, this school district is doing, I think, first and foremost, I can bring a set of talent and skill set that doesn't exist today on the board. I think the board also, to me, represents you all. Right? We need to do a better job of listening to the people that elect us to do the job that you need us to do. So I would first and foremost want to be your representative. So if there's something that is on your mind or there's a miscommunication somewhere, I'd like to be the bridge to do that. I feel like in going door knocking, I've I felt from a lot of different people, the feedback I've been getting is that they don't feel like they're represented right now, that they don't have a voice and they don't know how to communicate with the administration here. So I think that can help do that in a way that hasn't been done before. But getting back to my education as a developer, really as a project manager, I've been working a lot in that realm. We have an opportunity to save taxpayer money because there's a lot of expense, $100+ million schools that are going in. It's a lot to look at, and the board has to approve those plans. And in improving those plans, we don't have that skill set on the board right now. I'd be able to look at that objectively, hopefully get them on schedule, keep them on schedule, look for flaws before they happen. So I think that would be probably, that would sum up at least hopefully my role and how I can help the school board at least initially with this happen.
Thank you, Ms. Pfeiffer. I'm going to repeat the question. Describe your vision and belief about the role of a school board member. What can you do and what you're not permitted to do? And what are your talents, experiences, and abilities that you can bring to the office that would make you as a board member?
So as a board member, first of all, I have 4 years experience doing the job. There are three main areas, three main roles that a school board member has. Planning, that is setting strategic goals and instructing our director of schools in what direction we want to go in the school system. Promotion, that is promoting our schools and what they are doing and what they are, doing well, what our students are doing and achieving. And policy, making policy, much of which comes to us from the state, but sometimes there are things that our favorite one to revisit every year is the valedictorian policy. We really like to bring that one back and sort of tweak it every time. So those are the three main things that we have a responsibility for as a school board member and what we do. We review, as a part of that, we review contracts and help to direct the district in terms of those major goals and directions that we're going. What we aren't, we're developers. We're not construction project managers. Those are not our job. We are not day-to-day, operations people. We don't tell principals what to do. We don't tell principals how to manage discipline or anything like that. We do approve and set the code of conduct, for instance, and we do communicate with the director of schools when we see a flaw there. One issue that we had was enforcement of dress code 2 years ago. And as a group, we directed the director of schools that we wanted to see that improved. And it did. We also, this past year, directed our director that we wanted to see changes in the enforcement of our policies and with regard to behavior. And so he did that. They're having a 2-day session right now with administrators on enforcement of those policies.
2 minutes goes fast on there. 30-second rebuttal or response, Mr. Hohman.
Just in regards to the developer comment, the district is in the development business by building schools. And by having, for instance, on Green Hill High School, we had an $824,000 flaw that I could have saw in advance and hopefully save the money on. So I think that expertise, and what I'm talking about there, if you don't know, for those that don't know, there was a drainage issue related to the tennis courts that ended up costing the taxpayers $824,000 after the school was constructed. Those are things that I could look at first and foremost and before the board approves those plans and be able to look for those flaws before they happen.
Thank you, Mr. Hohman. Ms. Pfeiffer, 30 seconds.
I'm glad you brought up the tennis courts because as a parent of a tennis player in this county, I've been advocating for those things for many, many years. We have problems at all of our tennis courts that need to be fixed. And the way that a board member addresses those is not by reviewing the plans, but by directing the director of schools to have those bid separately so that our athletic facilities, our fields, and our courts are going to be built separately and bid separately by someone who has expertise in that area. That is the conversation that I've already had with the director of schools.
Thank
it's
you.
the comment that I've made in public before.
Thank you. By the end of this, we're going to get really good with our time and our transition. With regard to budget, education funding is the largest expense of local government? I've seen numbers that range anywhere from in the low to mid 50% of our local dollars, all the way up to an excess of 80 cents of every local tax dollar is spent for education. Provide examples of what you would do as a school board member to ensure that taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely and well. And can you identify any areas of waste or duplication of services? And do you have any suggestions of steps that you can implement to save tax dollars? Ms. Pfeiffer, it's your turn to lead with that.
Right now, I feel like our budget is squeezing the life out of every penny. We have put everything that we can into teachers and into personnel. Between 80 and 85% of our budget is in personnel in particular. As far as excess or waste, I'm not going to say waste necessarily, but there have been several areas over the last 4 years where I felt like there was a contract that was in place, sometimes very expensive ones. I'll give you an example of a $2 million contract for Achieve 3000. And this is one that a lot of parents had a problem with. I had a problem with it as a parent, and that I believed was not actually being used in the way in which it was supposed to be used, according to what I heard back from parents and from teachers and administrators. And so that's one place that we have to be as board members very careful in what we look at in the way that our money is being spent, and make sure that if a program is not doing what it is supposed to do, that we eliminate that program and move on to something that is doing what it's supposed to do.
Thank you. Mr. Hohman, I'm going to repeat the question. Okay. Education funding is the largest expense in local government. Please provide examples of what you as a school board member can do to ensure taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely and well. And can you identify any areas specifically of waste or duplication of services? And do you have any suggestions of steps you can implement to save tax dollars?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier my experience in construction, and in particular, my experience in construction is budgets in excess of $100, $200, $300 million in some of these large developments that I've helped manage and set those budgets for. And within those budgets, a lot of times you'll have a program that you believe is going to cost this much, but in reality, it either costs a little bit more and some cost a little bit less. So you're constantly managing those dollars back and forth. Now, I think the first thing you look at is there anything that we're duplicating on? Is there any programs related to curriculum or things like that maybe we could, maybe again, that aren't needed? Maybe we could cut that. I'd have to really dive into those and get the data to make those decisions effectively. But my experience in doing that in a day-to-day basis would immediately help the board out. I'm used to seeing those big numbers, and then understanding that over the life of any budget over any year, there's things that you could throttle back on, or, hey, by the way, this is going to come up, especially in terms of our renovations and things like that are going to come up with these aging schools that we have. I think right now we got about 14 schools that are older than 2005, I think. So those are things we need to really take into account as we get further into it. But I believe my experience, my professional experience would help in that regard.
Thank you. Ms. Pfeiffer, do you care to rebut or reply in any way?
I do want to just add one other thing. When you look at the budget and what we're doing there, you also have to consider the operational aspect of the budget, which is the day-to-day, year-to-year budget, and also the capital budget. Some of those things with our major outlays, and that is for renovations and things like that. Our county commission has done an excellent job handling debt service, so that when we have gone to them to ask for a new school building to be built, they are typically able to do that. And that's one of the things that we've also done, so to work with them very well on that.
Thank you. Mr. Hohman, 30 seconds, if you care to reply or rebut in any way.
No, I'm okay.
All right. Next question, we'll lead off with Mr. Hohman, so hang on to the microphone.
Yes, sir.
It's about retention. Middle Tennessee is a highly competitive job market, including and so especially for professional educators. What can you do as a board member to promote and support, attract and retain educators, as well as support staff, including maintenance, transportation, cafeteria, and custodial workers? Give 2 specific examples of steps to attract new employees and retain quality employees.
Let's dive into that one a little bit. In terms of teacher retention, I guess the first question would be if a teacher is deciding that they're going to leave the district, I'd like to know a little bit more about why that is. And are we doing our best to fight for that teacher? Because the most expensive part of bringing a new employee in is the training. Then once you have them here, you don't want to lose them right away. And some of the information I've been getting in door knocking is that we're not doing enough to fight to keep some of our current teachers employed here. I think too that in my research, I noted that Lebanon Special School District across the board pays more than our teachers here in Wilson County. So we need to kind of figure out why that is and what we can do better. I know that we've increased pay for our teachers up to 15%, I think, over the last few years. The board's made that recommendation on the recommendations from Mr. Littrell. But I also think if you're going to retain teachers, we need to look at the environment in which those teachers are working in. And are we handling discipline issues in a timely manner? Are we supporting our teachers when those discipline issues happen in a way that they feel like, hey, enough's enough. We got the things in place to support you if that child is a continual discipline issue, so we can get back to learning in the classroom. And then lastly, I think we really need to take a look at our retirement packages. Are we doing enough for our teachers on the back end of their career after they've worked for us for 30 years in our community? Are we doing enough to keep them here so they can retire here and enjoy their retirement? So I think those are the things that I would look for.
Ms. Pfeiffer, I'll repeat the question. Middle Tennessee is a highly competitive job market, including and especially for professional educators. What can you do as a board member to promote and support, attract and retain educators as well as support staff, including maintenance, custodial, transportation, and cafeteria workers? Please give 2 specific examples of steps to attract new employees and retain quality employees.
So to respond to a couple of things that Mr. Hohman said, first of all, we do exit surveys. Not everyone responds to them because some people are leaving in anger. So they don't all respond to them. But we know from those exit surveys that the vast majority of our teachers leave our district to seek better pay elsewhere. I see people in this room who left our district to seek better pay elsewhere. So that is one of the major challenges. Now, I also can tell you why LSSD is able to pay more. It is because of the way that the tax structure works, where Lebanon Special School District, as a school district, is able to collect taxes from the city of Lebanon, in addition to taxes that are collected from Wilson County that Wilson County Schools gets. Also, every time we have a bond issue that's going to bring money in to pay for a new school building, guess who gets a portion of that bond? Lebanon Special School District. So they are at an advantage when it comes to raising revenue. We don't raise revenue. We do the best that we can with the revenue that we've got. So I think that the 15% increase in the salaries that we have done is really outstanding. When it comes to retirement, I also think that we're doing a great job there. We are a part of what is called the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. It is one of the top 5% of pensions in the United States right now in terms of its soundness. It also includes the opportunity to choose to participate in a 401k, and the school district pays a significant part of that. Now, when it comes to the specifics to retain teachers and support teachers, I would say one thing that teachers have told me is that in the elementary grades, they need more interventionists in those buildings. Our Title I schools have interventionists in math and language arts, and our not Title I schools only have them in ELA. So I would like to see us add a math interventionist. Also, the attitude of our community is one of the biggest things that we can do to keep teachers in Wilson County.
Ms. Pfeiffer, thank you. If you would, let's not get out of hand. We were doing really well. I've got officers here who will hold you in contempt. Mr. Hohman, would you care to reply or rebut in some way?
No, I'm okay.
What about, well, there's no sense to respond to his non-response. All right. Ms. Pfeiffer?
I don't
If you'll hand the microphone to Ms. Pfeiffer, we'll talk about school performance. Wilson County consistently rates in the top 10% statewide in public schools with regard to proficiency, testing, attendance, and graduation rates. Nonetheless, what will you do or can you do as a school to improve those scores and evaluations so that we can catch up with Williamson County?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. And this is something that I think really is the goal that everybody has, right? When we're number 2 in everything and Williamson County is number 1 among similarly sized, even though they are like twice as big as we are as far as the number of students they serve. First of all, we have no failing schools in Wilson County. We have 23 schools. No school has below a C letter grade. There are no failing schools in Wilson County, and we should be very proud of that. I am very proud of that. But there are definitely things that we can do to improve, especially in the high schools. One of the things that we need to do to catch up with and measure up with Williamson County is to put more of a focus on ACT prep. In order to get those ACT scores up. There are a lot of things that they are doing in Williamson County to specifically target that. Williamson County has a program where they specifically target national merit also. If they see that your kid is, in that range where they could potentially be a national merit scholar, they have tutoring programs for their high school kids. And that is something that we could be doing here too. Something that Mount Juliet High School does already that the rest of our schools don't is the exit interview process for the seniors in high school. And they have to write a resume. They have to do an actual interview where members of the community come in and ask them questions as if they were going into a job interview. And that is something that is so important for our kids, whether they are going into directly into the world of work or whether they're going on to college. Those interpersonal skills and being able to speak with adults and to make eye contact and to shake a hand and to write a resume. These are things, very simple changes that don't cost a whole lot either, that we could make in order to really make an impact for a lot of our students.
Thank you, Mr. Hohman. We know about Wilson County's success rates as we have right now. There's always room for improvement, though. What will you do as a school board member to improve those scores and evaluations so that we can take that number 1 slot in the state?
Well, I think it's easy to celebrate the kids that do really well, and those things, the high ACT scores, the kids that perform well on AP tests. I have one of my own I'm very proud of. But beyond that, I think the one thing that really strikes me is really trying to celebrate more of the kids that know how to do things with their hands and vocational training. To me, I'd really like to see an emphasis on those kids that know how to frame a house or learn how to frame a house or do foundational work or electrical work or nursing work or farming, and really get more of an emphasis in that, in celebrating those things, because a lot of kids they don't need to go to college. And I think today most people would look around and kind of decide, well, is college even the right choice? It's hugely expensive. You may or may not like the curriculum that you get. And I think we're seeing that a lot of kids want to know that there's a path that doesn't require them going. And if they're really good with their hands, and maybe they're not good test takers, but they're really good with their hands, and they can put some electrical wire together, or they can build a car or do anything like that. I'd really like to see more of a focus on that and a celebration of those kids, so they know that they're equally as glorified as those kids that get the high ACTs and go to West Point and those types of things, which are fantastic. And I think the Wilson County schools are doing a great job in supporting those kids right now, but I'd like to see more of that push towards the vocational side of things.
Thank you. Ms. Pfeiffer?
Mr. Hohman and I absolutely agree on that. 70% of Wilson County School students are CTE concentrators. 70% of them are completing a minimum of 2, but most of them 3 or more career technical courses. My daughter is going to be graduating next year as a CTE concentrator in health sciences. Wilson County has a national champion in health sciences in the HOSA, Health Occupations Student Association. So we have a lot of kids that are doing really incredible work in that area. We also have a student who's won in welding.
Thank you. Mr. Hohman, do you care to respond or reply in any way?
No, I don't.
I think we can all be grateful and congratulate students who do so well in those programs. Thank you for bringing that up. We'll move on to our next topic, and that's about state mandates. Mr. Hohman, you'll take the lead on this. In this year's past General Assembly session in Nashville, the General Assembly wrestled with the Governor Lee's push to implement school vouchers in Tennessee. Vouchers, in essence, give parents financial assistance to have more school choices. Do you support school vouchers? And what impact would school vouchers have on public schools generally and on Wilson County schools specifically?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. A lot of the information I'm getting door to door are people that either homeschool or private school. And I look at that and at first, why is the issue of school vouchers even on the table? What is it about the public school system that people feel like they need a choice to move away from the public school systems? And what can we do better to compete for those kids? Because financially, if a child's in homeschooling or if it was a true voucher program, I don't believe the state law that came by was actually dollars that follow your kid. But assuming that did happen, automatically the public school systems would be hit with a deficit because of those kids now would take their private school dollars, their homeschool dollars with them, and not basically subsidize the public school systems and their private school education. So I think we have to realize that no, there's not much that we can do other than be prepared. If the state does go that way, we need to be prepared to compete. And we don't want those kids to leave. So we need to take a hard look at what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, make improvements so that we can compete for those kids. We can put together a better product. As a small business owner, we had to have a better product or we wouldn't sell anything. So you really need to take a hard look and say, hey, listen, if this is going to happen, we need to be ready for it. And we can't afford to lose our kids. We got these great facilities. We just need to figure out, well, why are parents leaving? Is it because there's rain falling on their heads at Lakeview Elementary or some of the other anecdotal evidence I got from going door to door? So I think that to me would be the real way to focus on that. Again, the school board isn't going to make that decision. The state's got to make that decision. So we better be prepared for how to handle it.
Thank you. Ms. Pfeiffer, I'll repeat the question. General Assembly wrestled with Governor Lee's push for school vouchers this past legislative session. Vouchers, in essence, give parents financial assistance to have more school choices. Do you support school vouchers? And what impact would school vouchers have on public schools generally and on Wilson County schools specifically?
So there is a place and a time for vouchers, but it's not Wilson County and it's not now. Vouchers are intended for failing schools, for people with children in failing schools, as an opportunity for them to move their child out of school into a better, more successful environment. Wilson County doesn't have any failing schools, so Wilson County is not the place for that, and that's why I oppose the governor's plan that would have been a blanket across the board for the entire state plan for vouchers. It absolutely would take money away from Wilson County schools, as it would, take money away from the overall TISA investment. But more importantly for Wilson County, I'm really not worried about the kids who would leave Wilson County. What I'm worried about are the kids that would come to Wilson County, because the governor's plan would put no limits on county to county transfers. We would be required to take those students, which is something that we don't do right now. And it would be very expensive. The governor's plan did not guarantee that operational dollars would follow those students beyond the first year. So what you would see happen is students flooding in, and this is very important for Zone 1 in particular, is because you would have a lot of people who say, I don't want my kid to go to McGavick High School, and they would come to Green Hill. And that would mean overcrowding in our facility here. It would mean hardships for us here, and it would mean an increase in the local dollars that are needed in order to make sure that our schools run the way that they're running right now.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Not really. Mr. Hohman, do you care to reply or rebut in any way?
Yeah, I would
Pfeiffer's
just,
answer?
my understanding since COVID that the homeschool and the private school attendance has gone up 77 and 80%, I think, respectively. I think we need to take a hard look. Some of the information that I'm getting from parents that I've met going door to door, they're very concerned about the direction our schools are going, and they have real concern they need to be heard. So I think if we just blanketly say that we're doing a great job, then why are these parents choosing to homeschool or choosing private school over Wilson County schools? I think we can do better. That's all I'm suggesting. Thank you.
30 seconds, Ms. Pfeiffer.
People choose homeschooling and private schools for a lot of reasons, and I respect those reasons. We all have different needs for our kids, and sometimes those needs will lead us to private school or homeschool. I have lots of friends who are homeschooling their children right now, or whose kids are in private school. I have some who are in this room right now whose kids went to private school in middle school and they came back for high school because a high school like Green Hill can offer a curriculum that small private schools can't match.
Thank you. Ms.
Ultimately.
Thank you. Next question we'll have, and Ms. Pfeiffer, if you'll lead off on this one. It's also about state mandates. Recently, in the last few years, our General Assembly passed legislation regarding retention of students at the third grade level, if not proficient. This is as a result of the mandated shutdowns from the COVID episode. Do you support third grade retention, the third grade retention mandate? And if not, what alternatives do you support to ensure students are ready for promotion to the fourth grade?
So I do not support the current third grade retention law, although, of course, we follow it here in Wilson County. I disagree with it, and there are a couple of reasons why I disagree with it. First and foremost, it is based on a single data point. And the fact that these kids spend an entire year working toward a test on a single day, maybe it's given over a couple of days now, that is going to determine whether or not they get held back. It's very stressful. And I would go as far as to say, and I think there are people in this room who would agree with me, it kind of ruins the third grade experience for those kids, because for some of them, it's all that they think about. And so for that reason, I can't support that law. Now, what I will say is that there are ways that we could make that better, still making third grade a benchmark year, but we could improve the way that we do it so as to remove that stress from children and families, but also still have a high level of accountability. And there is something that has very, very good that has come out of the program, and that is the money that the state has invested in the tutoring programs and in summer learning. Both of these things are things that we should have been doing all along, but the money wasn't there for it. And by making that investment, the state has made it possible for us to intervene for a lot of these kids. So what you see now is that our third grade performance rate is going up. Here in Wilson County, we have less than 1% of our third graders who will end up being retained if we base it off of last year's numbers, but also based off of the performance numbers. We saw that we had an over 8% jump in student performance in the fourth grade this year. And I believe that that is because of the investment that we are making in tutoring and in summer learning.
Thank you. Mr. Hohman, do you support the third grade retention mandate? And if not, what alternatives do you support to ensure students are ready for promotion to the fourth grade?
Yeah, I mean, the mandate's the mandate. So the state's going to lay that down, and we're going to have to figure out a way to manage that. I think currently it's at 57%, meaning 43% of our kids aren't making it proficient, at least. Now, some kids just don't take tests well, and so that single data point, like Ms. Pfeiffer talked about, is a difficult situation for many kids to get over. And there is a tremendous amount of stress in third grade. So what are we doing to prepare them for third grade? Is there something that we can do even in pre-K or K1 and 2 better to get them ready? So it's just another test they take in third grade. So by the time they get there, they're well prepared for that. It's really a data-driven thing. So we need to take a look. Is it class size that affects the better performing schools? Is there a certain teacher that's applying certain techniques that might do better? Maybe their classroom and successively year after year, they're performing better than other teachers. What are we doing? Is there some best practices that we can learn from that and then implement that across the district. So kind of getting into the data a little bit with the teachers that are actually preparing our kids for third grade, because it is very stressful. I've talked to a lot of parents that they dread going into third grade, and they really want to make sure that their kid makes it to fourth. That's a horrible way to get through third grade. So I do believe that we need more information on that, and we need to look at our best practices so we can make better, more informed decisions about how to increase that number, because 57% to me is not good enough. We should be 85%. So how do we get there?
Thank you. Ms. Pfeiffer, any rebuttal or reply?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is, I mentioned before, one of the things that teachers are asking for is an increase in the number of interventionists in our schools. And that's a budgetary consideration, but it's something that we have already been talking to the director of schools about. And it'll just be a matter of, of finding ways to reprioritize and make sure that our, personnel are where they need to be.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Hohman. All right. Mr. Hohman, if you'll take the microphone, you've got the next question. We'll move on to the topic of school security. Schools are caretakers for parents' most precious and prized possessions, their children. School violence, including shootings, we can name some: Columbine, Parkland, Uvalde, Sandy Hook, Covenant here in Nashville, are perhaps the most important issue. Various ideas and programs have been suggested to improve school safety. School resource officer programs, security scanners, as well as most recently, arming teachers and staff in schools. As a school board member, what steps would you take to promote and support to ensure our students are safe and secure?
Yeah, safety is a big concern for every aspect of our lives today, and especially when it comes to the lives of our children as they come into the school, because the last thing we would want is to have something like those incidents happen and prevent our kids from coming home that day. That's about the worst. I think Governor Lee's done a good job of providing funding for the SROs, and I think the construction of these schools are set up with the safety measures in place are second to none. However, there is improvements we can make. And some of the things that I've noticed in dropping my son off at school here in Green Hills, there would be instances where doors were propped open in the back of the school, where parents, maybe the band or somebody else is trying to get in through the back of the school. They prop a door open in the morning. Those things have been called upon. It doesn't seem like the excuses that we were given was like, well, there's a teacher back there and the teacher can handle that. And as long as there's a teacher there, we can. But that the kids should be coming through the front door. We should prevent things like that from happening. If there's protocols in place, we should be following those things. And I think that there's enough policy and procedures in place. It's just, to me, it's accountability and following through with those policies to ensure that our safety for our students is not jeopardized.
Thank you. Ms. Pfeiffer, of course, school violence, school shootings have been an issue in our country for several decades now. Various ideas and programs have been suggested to improve school safety, including school resource officers, security scanners, and even this most recent legislative session, arming teachers. As a school board member, what steps will you promote or support to ensure that our students are safe and secure?
So first off, I want to say thank you. There's some SROs in the building today who are a part of the Sheriff's Department, and they are a very important part of what we do. And Wilson County has the longest history in the state of providing school security officers, SROs, in every single school. We also routinely, as a district, and this is a part of our directive to the director of schools, is to work in cooperation with all local law enforcement agencies. So you will see a couple of times a year that there are training drills that take place where the law enforcement officers are able to come into our school buildings and do exercises that would simulate what it would be like if we had an emergency situation, a variety of emergency situations. One thing that I have done specifically with regard to safety and security is the addition of 2 weapons detection canine officers to our school system. These were brought to me, this program was brought to me by a parent who was a parent in Lebanon Special School District, and they were pursuing having that in Lebanon Special School District, and they got that done last year. And she asked me if I could set a meeting up between her and the director of schools and if I would advocate for this program. And that is something that we brought to fruition, and these officers will be in place this coming school year. I'm very excited about that. It's something that can serve as a bridge between law enforcement and our students in the younger grades, but also it's something that at large events, we can have these officers deployed, and they provide just another layer of security. And that is what it really is about, is layers of security that we're providing. We've also added this year the security film to retrofit some of our buildings where we are able to.
Thank you, Ms. Pfeiffer. Mr. Hohman?
No, I don't really have anything further to add. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to our next question, which is about growth. And this would be for Ms. Pfeiffer. Wilson County leads the state in percentage of population growth and is consistently listed in national data as one of the fastest growing counties in the country. As a school board member, you can't slow, contain, or control growth. What do you propose as a way to respond or react to increasing numbers of children, such as flexible school building models, standalone schools, or campus plans, or land acquisition for future expansion?
Right. So right now we have 6 schools that are over 90% capacity. A couple of those are sitting at 91, so just barely over. But one of them, West Elementary, that is in this zone, is over 100% right now as we wait on the opening of Legardo. So one of the things that we have done in the last 4 years, and that I believe we need to continue to do, is to be proactive about land acquisition. As such, we voted as a board to give the director of schools the authority to go out and look for land, so he can talk to landowners when a piece of property may become available. And there are some landowners in this county that have indicated interest in setting land aside in a trust that would be specifically for use by schools or something like that. We have the ability as a board to rezone schools in order to move some of those populations around. We don't do that very often, but I think you'll see that happen as we open Legardo with our elementary schools, and we can use rezoning in order to address some of those overcrowding issues in some of our schools. The answer is not always to build a new school. It's a very expensive solution to a problem that's a problem in maybe a couple of places. So you have to be responsible with the taxpayers' dollars, and you have to be responsible to the parents and not do that rezoning over and over again and rezone the same kids. So, when we knew that we were going to be building Legardo, we did not rezone West Elementary. We brought in the portables. It is not what anybody wants to do, but it is the best thing for those kids to not be moved to different schools, just to be moved right back.
Thank you, Mr. Hohman. Wilson County's growth is obvious to everyone. As a school board member, since you can't slow, contain, or control that growth, what do you propose as ways to respond and react to increasing numbers of children, such as flexible school building models, standalone schools, or campus plans, as well as land acquisition for future expansion?
Yeah, a lot of this is in my wheelhouse in terms of the planning that I've done over my career. I worked a lot with the cities, school districts in the past on planning and understanding where the development's going to occur. Are the developers' plans still consistent? Are they going to go higher or lower density? Where are the kids going to be generated? Those types of things that we need to do a little bit better on the forward planning to better understand where those kids are coming from, so we don't get in this situation of every year having to rezone kids from one school to another. That's very disruptive to families and poor planning on our side as a school board. So we need to be more proactive in understanding where that growth is happening, and then take a look at our schools and understanding, is it better to go single story, 2-story, or 3-story? If there's a master plan of development around a certain area and we have a school plan there, we need to start taking into account some of those things, because maybe you can bring that school on for less money because we went up instead of staying down, those types of things, and analyzing those plans. So growth it's an important part of what we do here in as a school board member, but also just realizing that this is an attractive place for people to want to come and build their family in, and we need to embrace that and understand it and plan accordingly. So thank you.
Ms. Pfeiffer, do you have additional rebuttal or response?
I was just going to say, it's a good point there. The reason why we went out instead of up with West Wilson Middle School was because on that particular property, there was space to go out, and the cost of steel at the time that we were reviewing the plans and making that decision was going to make it more expensive. And it was also going to take more time to go up 2 stories rather than building out. We were presented with those options, and that's one of the reasons why we made that choice. Additionally, looking at Legardo, we purchased land there with the intent of putting 2 schools on that property.
Thank you. And any rebuttal or reply to that?
Just on the land acquisition side, there's if we're going to be putting land in trust, then we need to understand what the true cost of that land is. If it's out, far away from development, what's the cost of bringing utilities to it that would support a school? Are there transportation streets and transportation widths of roads that would support that school? So there's a lot more than just saying, hey, we got a tract of land out here that we can build a school on. We need to take a look at the total cost of development in those cases, and I feel like I can help in that regard.
Thank you. Mr. Hohman, if you'll hang on to the microphone, you'll lead with this question. It's about technology. We live in a digital age, as much as I hate it. What would you advocate as a school board member to enhance education options for students who will be entering a technology-dependent job market or higher education institution with highly developed and sophisticated technologies such as virtual classrooms and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, the artificial intelligence is interesting, right? As technology grows and things get seemingly more complicated or easy, depending on which way you look at it with the technology side of things. I think we need to understand that these things are just tools for the teacher to implement their job. We don't want to replace the teacher with these technologies. We want to enhance what the teacher's doing so they understand the role of that technology in learning in the classroom. So I think the role of the teacher is still by far the first and foremost. That's where the child's learning the most. And how do we supplement that learning with the proper use of AI and the proper use of the Chromebooks? I think having our kids dependent on the technology for answers is a problem, because now with AI, you can spout out some kind of a question and it'll give you the answer. So are we promoting that now instead of having our kids work through the process of learning? You have to, you're going to be faced with a problem. Can you accurately get to a solution that makes sense at the end of the day? It's the process of learning that I'm afraid of, that our kids will be, that skill set will be forgotten as they become more dependent on things like AI and their Chromebooks for answers. We need to make sure that they understand how to think about solving those problems first. So that's where I'd end that one. Thank you.
Ms. Pfeiffer, what would you advocate as a school board member to enhance education options for students who will be entering a technology-dependent job market or a higher education institution with highly developed and sophisticated technologies, such as virtual classrooms and artificial intelligence?
Lest any potential employer out there decides not to hire me because of this, I'm going to reveal something about myself. I am not very good at Excel or Google Sheets. These are skills, though, that I think our kids need to have, especially our kids who are looking at careers in business. If you say mail merge to me, I might cry. But these are things that our students sincerely need to be learning. There are a lot of technology skills out there that our kids have to learn. Now, that said, you will also often hear at board members, myself or Dr. Myers, say, there is no substitute for a teacher and what a teacher does. And it's one of the reasons why I was opposed to re-upping our contract with Achieve 3000. Achieve 3000 was supposed to be a tool used in small group instruction. And it was just being used as a, give them this to do. And it's, so they're going to do 15 minutes of reading and they're going to answer the questions. And it was being used as a substitute for actual instruction. And that's not okay. As a board member, we have to be paying attention to those things. things when we are renewing contracts and when we're choosing our tools. Right now, with regard to AI, it's a really interesting world. You can't say we're not going to use AI because AI is literally in everything these days. So when you look at AI in the classroom, you have to teach kids how to use it to help them learn. So one example of what my oldest daughter does is that, she writes out a answer to a potential review or to a review question for an exam, and then she'll ask ChatGPT to write an answer. And she looks at the differences between her answers, and she uses that to look for deficiencies in what she knew and understood. That's one way that you can positively use AI, but we have to be proactive in teaching our kids how to use it right.
Thank you, Ms. Pfeiffer. Mr. Hohman, you care to respond or reply in any way?
Just in terms of the AI, I think we also need to understand the source of the AI and what any biases there might be in the source of that. If somebody's obviously filling the AI with information. So what is that information and how does it pertain to the learning? And does it meet the goals that we would set and the standards we would set for our kids?
Ms. Pfeiffer?
Agreed.
All right.
Oh, wait, I think it's me.
Next question about technology would be for Ms. Pfeiffer. As a board member, are there any opportunities to utilize technology to do more with the same number of staff, or to use data to more effectively use buildings, spaces, and physical resources more effectively and efficiently? And if so, what would you advocate to be done in this area?
So the first part of that, the way that technology can be used is where we have staff shortages. It's unfortunate, but it's true that there are sometimes key positions that we can't fill in our classes, in our school buildings. So let's say that you have a calculus position. You need a calculus teacher and you can't find a calculus teacher. That's a place where technology can be used, where virtual classrooms can be used, so that we can either have instruction, and this actually in Wilson County goes way back. We were doing this back in the 1990s. I believe Beverly Sharp, who just retired, taught an AP calculus class where she had the cameras set up in her classroom, and she taught at Mount Juliet High School, and she had kids from Watertown who were watching digitally and interacting. And then I think, if I remember this correctly, she met them at Waffle House like once a month to answer questions in person. So we've been doing really creative things to deal with teacher shortages and using technology to do that for a very long time. When it comes to building use, absolutely. There are tools that our director of operations uses. And I would say with regard to, technology in efficient use of resources, our busing system is the one where we have used it most effectively up to this point, in making sure that our routing is as efficient as it can possibly be, and to make sure that our drivers are able to, get those children delivered back home or get them to school on time in the mornings.
Mr. Hohman, as a board member, are there any opportunities to utilize technologies to do more with the same number of staff, or to use data to more effectively use buildings and spaces and other physical resources more effectively? And if so, what would you advocate in that area?
I think one area we're deficient is in substitute teachers. If a teacher calls out sick, what is that classroom, and does that class, did they just lose a day because the substitute teacher isn't brought up to speed? Perhaps a great use of technology would be that lesson plan is already pre-programmed in that classroom, and that the substitute teacher can then implement that in a more effective way to keep the children from losing a day of school, because teachers get sick and there needs to be some continuity in that. So then the teacher comes back and then we got to catch up. So I think that might be an innovative way that we could use technology to keep the learning experience going within our schools.
Ms. Pfeiffer?
We've been doing very similar things. A lot of times what we'll have, and I know that this happened at Mount Juliet Middle School this year when we had a long-term sub in place in a social studies class because we couldn't get a staff member. We couldn't hire somebody, couldn't find somebody qualified. And so we did have teachers who were providing those lesson plans, and the long-term sub was implementing it.
Mr. Hohman, any reply or rebuttal?
No, sir.
All right. Well, looking at the clock, we started right at 6:30. It's 7:31. So let's do one more question, and then we'll get into our closing remarks. This question is about student and staff mental health. In this day and age, it's hard to turn off what we call cyber noise. Studies have shown recently that social media impacts students' mental health far more than adults, with higher rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. What would you offer or propose as a school board member as a way to promote healthy spaces for students and staff who are dealing with unprecedented challenges of distractions at school, at home, in the community, and constantly available through social media, including engaging parents in that mental health aspect?
It's a great question. I think I read a statistic that said a child from K to 12 will spend 16,000 hours in school, and an equal number, almost 15,000 hours involved in media of some sort, social media, TV, or whatever. So you're looking at 31,000 hours. You'd like to, I think the educational system should be a break from that social distraction with a focus really on educating our child. I think there's so much going on today in the world that takes them away from the goal of learning. I think we need to get back to a focus on pure learning and curriculum and getting away from the social distractions that are inside our classrooms, whether or not that's the limiting of cell phones in some way, so the cell phones don't, maybe they're available, but they're not on their person, so the kids can be purely focused on the goal of being educated, that they understand their purpose in coming to school every day is to be educated, that the parents understand their role in getting their child ready to come to school, prepared and ready to learn. I think getting back to some of the basic kind of common sense things would be really important for us to take a hard look at, because it's a crazy world. There's so much going on. There's so much messaging going on, and a lot of it conflicting. So I think the school should be a place where it's neutral, where they can just come in and they know I can just get away from that for a minute. I'm going to focus, because I think then if their attention is purely on education, purely on the goal of getting through a series of tasks and getting to the end of that successfully, then they're going to feel better about themselves. And then they can go home and get all the social interaction, the gameplay, or whatever they want to do at home. But I think we need to get back to basics in our curriculum.
Thank you. Ms. Pfeiffer, again, with the noise that we have from the internet and other aspects in our lives, what would you offer or propose as a school board member as a way to promote healthy spaces for students and staff who are dealing with these unprecedented challenges of distractions at home, at school, in the community, and constantly available through social media? And how would you engage the parents or in families to incorporate them into that mental health aspect?
So I really wish that schools could be a cell phone free zone. And I know all the kids in the room are rolling their eyes at me. And I know a lot of parents that don't want it to be a cell phone free zone either, because they want to be able to communicate with their kid when they need to regarding transportation changes or after school activities and things like that. What we have seen is an increase in the amount of distraction that's coming from students. I talked to one principal recently who had a parent come in for a meeting because the kid's cell phone had been taken up because he was using it inappropriately during class, and set it on the table with the parent, who thought it was a problem that the phone had been taken up, and that phone just vibrated the table the entire time they were talking, and the parent couldn't even keep their eyes off of it. So I do think that we really do need to engage with parents about the dangers and the problems of being so connected. We at Green Hill High School, the parent-teacher organization provided cell phone hangers for a lot of teachers for their classes so that they could take those phones away. Well, what the teachers found was that the students, when they started requiring their students to put the phones in there, what did the students do? They brought fakes. They brought duplicate phones. So this is something that teachers are doing what they can to combat, and the parent-teacher organization is doing what they can to combat. As a school district, we're doing what we can, but we need to encourage, as a district, we need to provide opportunities to educate parents. Forums like this, we've had nights where we brought in educators, whether it's school psychologists, to make a presentation to parents to help them to understand the level of distraction that comes when their kid's phone is in their pocket and it's buzzing and they just can't wait to figure out what Sally said. And I know we all know it because I'm the same way, wondering.
Thank you. Mr. Hohman, you care to respond or reply in some way?
I think I covered it. Thank you, Josh.
Well, my mother's not here anymore, but she didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone, but she knew everything that I said, did, and even thought. And I don't know how. As we wrap up, I want to thank you for your answers and your civility and your professionalism tonight. And you will each have 3 minutes to summarize your remarks and your responses, address any issues that weren't asked about this evening, and to seek voter support and to thank the supporters that you do have. And with that, we'll start with Ms. Pfeiffer.
Thanks again for coming tonight. I really do appreciate seeing so many people who are engaged in this election. I was a government teacher, and I think that there's nothing that is more important than exercising your right to vote and to participate. I will say again, I believe that I have done a great job with fulfilling the promises that I made when I ran for office the first time. There were a number of things that I committed to, and like maintenance of school buildings. Existing buildings are important, just as important as our brand new buildings that we're building. So for Zone 1 in particular, I have worked very hard to get this Mount Juliet Middle School renovation taken care of, and it is finally being done and should be done in September. I've also worked very hard to get Lakeview to the point, and this goes to working with the county commission as well, that we are at a point now. The mayor tells me that we have a plan for that, and that in the next 6 months we should probably be able to move forward with putting the funding in place for that, so that we can go forward with the renovation at Lakeview and an addition that's going to add a lot to the safety and security of that building as well. Over this time, we've addressed successfully teacher retention issues by raising pay. We have addressed bus driver shortages to the point that we now have basically every single route in the county staffed. We have set priorities with the director of schools to make sure that we've done this all with a balanced budget. We've brought a balanced budget without having to dig into the money that's set aside for a rainy day every single year. We're not doing any of our operational work out of that. It's just very important, and I think that it does build a lot of great goodwill with our county commission when we tell them that we do need something. I'm proud of my record and of these achievements, every single one of them, and they've all come out of putting your kids first every day. Every decision that I make, whether it's a parent coming to me because they have a problem with something that happened in their kid's school, or whether it's looking at something like land acquisition that's looking at future generations of kids in this county. Every day, every kid. That's what I'm here for. And I hope that you will reelect me and send me back to do 4 more years of that every day.
Thank you. Mr. Hohman, you'll have 3 minutes to summarize your remarks, address any issues that weren't asked about this evening, and to seek your voter support, and also thank the supporters that you do have. Mr. Hohman.
And first off, I do want to thank you all for taking times out of your busy schedule to come tonight. I know we have other obligations, but being part of the process of our self-government is an important role, and I do appreciate, and I'm humbled by the amount of people that are here tonight. I think some of the things that I bring to the table, the intangible or the tangible things really I bring to the table is my expertise in the development world as an engineer. I think I can help right away with all the growth that's going on in the school district to help save money and be a steward of our tax dollars. Some of the intangible things that I think we really need to focus on. It's instead of we're building these great schools, but we also need to really get our focus back on building great students. And I think the focus needs to be on having them understand purely what their role is. We need better community members at the finish of their career. So I believe getting a foundation neutralized inside the classroom where they can again focus purely on their education. So when they leave there, they have purpose. They want to stay in our community. They want to make our community better. Because somebody asked me, said, well, how do you know what Wilson County values are? And I said, because I sought them out. You have a reputation here in Wilson County as a place for American values, a love of God, a love of country, and a love of community. And that's what I sought out. And that's why so many people are moving to Tennessee for that reason. So we have as a school board member, we have to be that umbrella to protect our students and really just embody what it means to be a Tennessee and a Wilson County resident. And I think, to me, I fully embrace the culture and the values that are embodied in this place. And I look forward to serving you all in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully you've seen enough of the differences between us, and you'll make an informed decision. We have it's an important election. It's going to shape the next 10, 12 years or more, and it's important. So thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate that. Vote for Greg Hohman on coming up on Friday. Get out there, tell your friends, and be part of the process. So thank you again for coming.
Again, I want to thank everyone for turning out tonight, and for those of you who tuned in. Ms. Pfeiffer, Mr. Hohman, thank you again for answering questions and hopefully informing the voters out here so that they can make that informed decision. And with that, I wish every family, every person here a great evening and a safe trip home.
Thank you, Judge.